Welcome to Northern BC Narrative on Location. Today, I have an actor with me by name of Mr.
JP Winslow.
JP Winslow. It's hard to pronounce. JP, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good.
Talk about yourself and what you do.
Well, acting is primarily what I do, and I've been doing that on and off because it's often an on and off type business, as we know, since I was a kid.
Since you were a kid?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Since probably the first sort of film experience, and then mostly what I do is stage stuff and more entertain. I really like interactive entertainment. That's what I really like to do. So working with an audience and that sort of thing. Yeah. But yeah, the first film experience I remember having was probably in 1978.
1978.
Yeah.
You were a kid, right?
I was a kid. Yeah.
So how did you even get into it? Like, how did it start? Like, did you have a passion for it? Were you reading novels? Like, how did this deep passion started?
Yeah, well, it started because my dad sort of, who passed away just in 2019, actually, sadly, but the most important thing in his life, I think, was film.
Film.
He was absolutely obsessed with film. He loved movies, particularly movies from the 30s and 40s and 50s, sort of golden age of cinema, as we still call it.
Yeah, still.
So you know, he was really he wanted to be an actor. Yeah. When he grew up, I'm from Newfoundland.
Newfoundland.
Yeah, other side of the country.
Yes. Yeah, Newfoundland. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's near Nova Scotia. And
yeah, we're the island.
I know. I love that place. Oh my God, people
great.
are so friendly in that area.
Absolutely.
I lived in Halifax for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And then I almost went to Newfoundland. Maybe we drove.
A lot of people say I almost went to Newfoundland.
No, because
there's that, I got that far and then there's the water. Yeah, I know, but no, it's a big deal.
Yeah,
it's a big
the
deal.
water, right?
It's a big deal. You got to take the ferry and you got to do the whole thing, right? But yeah, I grew up there, and so, you know, his parents were a lot older, when he was born. His father, my grandfather, was 57, I think, when my father was born. So, you know, they were older and came from a, almost Edwardian tradition.
What is that?
So like late, he was still living in the late sort of 19th century. Yeah. You know what I mean? So that sort of attitude toward things. Not that they weren't supportive of many things he did, but it just wasn't.
They didn't care, right?
Well, it wasn't a thing you did.
He's not a doctor, that's why, right?
Yeah, not a doctor. No. And my grandfather was a tailor, so very trades oriented. Yeah. He made clothes back when there were still clothing factories in Newfoundland. It was, and people still did that. So he came from that kind of background. But my dad got into films as a young kid because his parents were older, and it was a fantasy, a way to experience the world, which I think we all can say that about films and plays and books, whatever. So he got into that very young, and really had a passion for it. And music as well. I grew up, my dad and my uncle were in a band. They used to practice in the house even before I was born. And then when I was born, I was sort of around all of this stuff, drum kits and guitars and amps and all this stuff and practice. And they actually got a record contract with Columbia Records in the early 70s.
What is the name of the music?
They were a duet. There was another fellow involved. They were Walsh and Winslow. They made one single, and it got released and didn't really go anywhere because it's the nature of the business. But it's a band. So with bands, I've been in bands, and it's, there's the dynamics of trying to work with people and write. They did some stuff. But anyway, it was that kind of milieu that I was born into. But my dad loved film, was the main thing.
So his father, he wanted probably him to be in the trades, right?
Well, he wanted something, I think, like a lot of parents, even it's no exception today.
They want you to be doctor.
Well, they want you to be something where they know you're taken care of. They know that, you'll have a job. You'll have some kind of foundation in your life or whatever where you'll be okay, instead of like, I'm an actor. Well, oh God, what does that mean? I mean, that can mean a lot of things, right? I'm lucky enough to have made enough of a living doing these things. But again, it's especially when you're young, it's a challenge. There's lots of people want to do it. But again, they had that same attitude. Like they wanted probably, maybe not a doctor, but something that they could understand.
Yeah.
You know, something you had your hands on, whatever. So they, and just sort of the generational gap at that point too was huge.
So how did he, because there's no support in those days, how did he not give up and keep going forward?
He just got into things. He became a projectionist, a film projectionist.
Oh, wow.
And he just went and got the job with famous players in Newfoundland, and he ran movies. And so he had, there was always movies there. So if you're not making the movies, you can run the movies. And he loved the machines. And that led to, eventually, we moved to Toronto for a while, and he got involved with leasing a small theater that I vaguely remember being in. I was like 4.
Oh, wow.
And I remember watching 2001: A Space Odyssey when I was 4 years old. And I still have these images, and it made absolutely no sense. I mean, and it probably still doesn't for many people, even as an adult. It's quite a film.
Yeah, I've seen it. I was just like,
What?
doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
Especially the ending. I was
yeah, it's like apparently it does. I don't know.
I got ripped off.
Yeah, but visually, I mean, that film was really something. I mean, it was quite something. But I remember those kinds of things. So then that happens. They had the record thing was going on. That didn't work out. So we're in Toronto. Really hard to make a living. We ended up going back to Newfoundland.
Oh, wow.
And he went back to being a projectionist. He was working for Famous Players, the movie theater chain. So doing that, and then he was working at a theater downtown St. John's called the Capitol Theater, which is on Henry Street in St. John's. And now this is getting into the late 70s and the early 80s, and recession, particularly in Newfoundland, it was pretty hard hit as far as economic recession. With, you can talk about the fishery and all the things that were really changing.
Talk about it a little bit.
I mean, my understanding, I mean, when Newfoundland was independent, so Newfoundland was officially the first British colony of the British Empire in the 1600s, right? As the British were building their empire in Newfoundland, and that was based on fish, the fish resources, and they talked about the Grand Banks in the very old days, where
what are the Grand Banks?
The Grand Banks is an area just to, I guess, the southeast of Newfoundland, the Avalon Peninsula, and back the legends are you could put a basket in the water and pull up codfish. You could just pull them out of the sea. There was so much fish resources. So that's why Britain was really interested in Newfoundland. There was a huge resource, money, and it was money and food, and this is the thing, and it was it's an example of globalization. There's nothing new in that. This is what was going on. So. Anyway, I forget where I started with this. Actually,
so your father went back.
We went back. Yeah, we went back. So recession. I was talking about recession. So by the 1980s, lots of people would say the fishery was mismanaged by the federal government. That's part of probably what went on with the decline in the fishery. Really hard, and the fishery was such a part of the economy.
So when you say declining in the fishery, are we talking about fish disappearing or?
Both, yeah. I mean,
they're overfished probably, right?
A lot of overfishing because factory ships in the 20th century became a reality, especially coming into the 70s. Massive ships that went out and fished and processed the fish on board, and it was even frozen on board. It was ready to go when it got to so very different way of doing things. It's technology. It changes things, and it alienates independent business. It just does, and it still does. So these things were going on in the late 70s and early 80s. Recession was there. So the movie theater, family managed to run it as a family business for about 2 years, 2.5 years.
So when you say family, your grandfather was running the business?
No, my father. My father and my mother ended up, when Famous Players closed the theater, he decided he wanted to lease the theater and open it himself, which he did. So I grew up in the late 70s, this is 1977, 78, where we spent all our time in a movie theater. Like all our time. It was a family business. So I was there till late at night, and we'd be in the early afternoon, late morning to get things going. I worked behind the candy counter when I was like a little kid to help. I cleaned the theater. And I would go with my dad, even before we opened it as a business, when he would go to work, I'd sometimes go to work with him and sit in the booth and watch the films through the little windows.
Yeah.
You know, the machines. I don't know if you know that sound. And then the changeover bell would go ding, 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 and you do the changeover, right? You know, to the other machine. So I was doing that.
Yeah.
So for example, the kind of part of my childhood was when Star Wars came out in '77.
Yeah.
We ran it in '78 as a second run film.
Yeah.
So for like 8 weeks in the summer, Star Wars was running. So my dad got this idea we should dress up as the characters. And this is before cosplay.
Oh, wow.
This is in the '70s. It wasn't really happening. So you could get the early masks, and I still have Darth Vader, Stormtrooper, and C-3PO from
You
1977.
have 1970?
1977.
Is it in boxes still? Or?
No, they were well used.
What is your address?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know what value.
cannot find- no,
yeah,
it's
they're hard
very-
to find the originals, and like even on the inside,
What is your address?
it's melted into it with you know, the date and the copyright.
It's probably really valuable.
It could be really
If
valuable.
you kept it good,
They're,
right?
again, they're pretty used.
But
They-
still, like, because it's so original, right? And
yeah,
there's
they were the first ones.
like a cult following.
They were the first issues. So he ordered these. I think they may even have come directly through 20th Century Fox. I'm not sure.
Oh, wow.
Ordered those back then because they didn't. It was like, okay, this is going to be big, and suddenly the marketing started, and it was kind of like, how are we going to do this? And the toys started coming, and anyway, that's a whole other history there. But so the costumes come. My mom did a lot of costumes for theater stuff that I was involved in.
She made it?
Yeah, we made costumes. So my dad was Darth Vader.
Yeah.
She was C-3PO.
Yeah. Your mom was C-3PO.
Yeah, and she'd sit in the ticket booth. You can't see out of the C-3PO mask. It's like these little holes, like this.
Yeah.
But she would sell the tickets in the ticket booth
Yeah.
with this mask on for the movie.
Yeah.
And then myself and my sister were Jawas.
Yeah. So you had the whole costume, right? The fairy.
Yeah, she made costumes out of burlap, which is kind of like potato sack. It's that really rough
Yeah.
material, and it always smells strongly.
Yeah, I know burlap.
You
I
know
worked
the
with
stuff?
burlap for films, you know.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just, and then it's itchy, right?
It's very itchy,
Yes,
but we'd be wearing these things and just walking around being in the space when people came in. So it's kind of like, again, this is cosplay, sort of proto-cosplay, you know, like people, there was some of that kind of stuff going on, but it wasn't like it is today. I mean, it's a huge thing,
yeah,
right?
today is huge.
It's a huge thing.
Fighting, there's
Yeah.
like groups of Jedi fighters.
Oh yeah,
and,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. So it was the elements of that were there. So we spent time doing that, and we got the early lightsabers were flashlights with these plastic tubes on it.
Is it the color plastic?
Yeah, but the tubes were just white, and it was a flashlight with just a gel filter
Yeah.
over the bulb. It was an incandescent bulb with the big D batteries, and you turn it on, and it was flat. So I had a red one. My dad had a red one because he was Darth Vader, and my sister I think had a blue one.
Yeah.
But we get up on the stage in front of the curtain
Yeah. Before the film.
before the film, and we'd like do a lightsaber
Oh,
fight
wow.
as Jawas, which whatever doesn't
Do you have
matter.
pictures and videos of this?
We don't have a lot of pictures of it because
You have some, right?
it was I don't even know if there's any. There might be one or
That would
two
have been
kicking around.
something, right?
And which is odd because my dad was fanatical about taking pictures. But the thing was, it was busy. Like everyone had so much to do.
Yeah.
We were just doing what we were doing.
Yeah.
So stuff like that went on, and so you're living in it, like living in this film world. You know what I mean? And
So, and every day, right?
that was every day, especially in the summer, because it's like, well, there was no school,
Yeah.
so this is where we were.
Yeah. Did you get paid from your dad or no?
I only got paid when I worked behind the candy counter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did you get paid with money or candy?
No, $2. I think they paid me $2 an hour.
$2 an hour.
Yeah,
Oh,
well, which is it's 1977, and I was
yeah.
what 78, so I was like 8, 9 years old.
Did you get free candy out of it?
I got free popcorn
Oh, free popcorn.
because popcorn is it's still one of the major staples of what's left of the sort of movie theater business.
Yeah,
The markup is like what 1,000% or something.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. It's basically printing money. It really is. And that was not that we made a lot on it, but that was the thing where you made your money.
Yeah.
Because film distribution costs a lot, especially if you got a major film like Star Wars. You're paying back. I guess it still works the same way. Up to 60%.
60%.
I think about. And again, I'm remembering this from being a kid.
That's a
So,
lot because you have to pay for electricity, you have to
Yeah.
pay for staff, the insurance.
so
you know.
yeah. So your profits, if anything, came from really a lot of it came from popcorn. let's face it. And ticket sales ticket prices were so cheap. I don't even know what they were. It was a couple of dollars to see a movie.
Yeah.
You know, so we were living in that kind of environment for a good period of time. And then in the mid 70s, around the same time, at home, we got, you know, an early VHS machine, right? Which were you know, it's about this big. It was a Panasonic with the, you know, the dials were still clicking like the old televisions.
Yeah.
It was all very analog. So we
Was it
got
the tube? Is it the tube ones or?
the TVs were tube ones, but the VHS was just this big tank of a thing. They weighed a ton. And we got a home video camera.
Home video camera.
Yeah, in the 70s.
Is it those big ones with a?
It was about this big, and it was kind of weighty.
Yeah.
You didn't have an XLR lens, or you had to look through a little viewfinder,
Yeah.
like, you know, trying to with little crosshairs on it. It was very, but it had a big power supply, like this brick that you had to connect it to. So we'd be making videos at home with the video camera, and nobody I knew had a video camera or a VHS at the time.
Your
because
dad really like wanted.
he
you
had to have
like,
it, and at that time he could afford to do it, so we had it, right? So then of course you could buy blank tapes, and they were really expensive to buy a blank tape, because I remember paying in the early '80s up to $25 for just one VHS tape.
What is that? It's like $100 right now.
Yeah,
right?
it was a lot, because you could only buy them at that point. There was one store, I forget the guy's name. He had this little electronics shop, and he was a Panasonic dealer, and he sold blank tapes. And they used to come in the big hard shell cases, if you ever saw those. You know, they were really significant. But he'd take the tapes out, and he'd sell the case separately.
Oh, wow.
So you had to buy the tape, then you had to buy the case if you wanted the case, right? So there was that stuff kind of going on at times. So there was, again, so we got the tapes, and then because he was into old movies, and all the late show always was, you know, the old black and white movies. We started taping them. So we had a collection of a few hundred movies just kicking around. Again, this is before people really were doing.
Yeah.
It wasn't
You
a
had your
common
own
thing.
Blockbuster. Was it Blockbuster?
Yeah, we did. There wasn't even it was. This is at the beginning of video rentals. I mean, it's just getting started, right? And that same shop where you could buy the gear, he started renting movies as well early on.
Oh, wow.
But we had this collection
Already.
that we'd have at home. Like, we're going to watch the Maltese Falcon tonight, or the Ten Commandments, or any of these classic type things. So it was always there.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of part of life, I suppose. So it wasn't even like, oh, there's this big dream of doing these. It was just like, people do this.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Were other kids jealous?
Well, there was a time when it got that way, because I go to school, and if I miss school, because I had a cold or whatever, when I would go to school, everybody would be like, "Oh, you're just home watching. You're just watching movies all day. That's what you're doing." Like, so there was a bit of that.
Yeah.
But I remember in grade 2, I had my birthday party at the theater, and we showed a Peanuts movie, a Charlie Brown movie, and I invited all my friends, and we all got the balcony.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so everybody came. There was like 25 kids, and we watched the piano. Everybody got free popcorn, and it was one of these. It was a bit of an event, right, to get to go to this, to have our own we had the balcony to ourselves. And, so stuff like that. It was sort of a constant.
That's amazing. I mean, like most kids, they didn't have a tragedy like that, right? Everybody was like, I guess, dreaming to watch a movie, you know, and all that stuff, right? And here you are in the theater, right?
Yeah, and it was it was a pretty big deal looking back at it. You know, you don't, when you're a kid, you're just this life, you're living your life, and you know.
And you don't realize it because you're part of it, right?
You're part of it, and it was fun. It was fun. Unfortunately, again, because of the nature of recession and whatnot, that particular phase of things only lasted a couple of years. But it's one of these you don't forget this stuff. It gets, because it is such an exciting, colorful thing. But further to that, there's back to the first film I remember having anything to do with. There's in St. John's is the Newfoundland Independent Filmmakers Cooperative, and they're still there.
Yeah, I think Halifax has one too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Atlantic Canada, they have such a good programs
Yeah.
when it comes to stuff like that. And there's a lot of filmmakers in Atlantic.
Yeah.
And everybody is very talented.
Yeah.
So you're going to work. It's a fierce competition.
And there's a history, because that goes back to, I'm talking to the mid 70s, early 80s, but it's even further back than that. Like, people were really into this stuff. And they had I remember going down, they had, the co-op had 2 houses downtown St. John's that they were the row houses, like they're all connected in St. John's.
Yeah.
It's all, the whole block is basically one unit.
All the houses.
Yeah, and they're all colorful and stuff now.
Yeah, they have all. Yeah, they got to keep. I think they have to every year. They have to keep up their color. Right?
Yeah, nowadays.
Yeah,
Back in the 70s, everything was kind of gray,
Yeah.
and it wasn't what it looks like today.
Oh, so you tell me it's purposely done like that?
I think
tourism.
people tourism was a big part of it, and Newfoundland was very, very smart, I think, in the early 90s, realizing what a resource tourism was, because when I was a kid, I didn't really get a sense of that, and maybe it was there, but it wasn't promoted, and it wasn't really looked at the same way from what I remember. But in the night, we start seeing this happening in the 90s.
The colors changing.
The colors, and people realizing there's a great heritage that people were really interested in. And suddenly Newfoundland music and Irish music is out. Bands like Great Big Sea became very popular across Canada and internationally as well, right? So people had this sense of Newfoundland culture. So things started to shift. And the realization that this is not only a heritage that's obviously worth sharing, but it's good for the economy. I think it really helped. Now, I've only been once since the mid 80s.
Oh wow!
Yeah, because just life. But it was nice to see that rejuvenation and people's real interest. Everywhere I go, if I say Newfoundland, oh, Newfoundland, yeah, someone knows something.
They're very friendly. The Atlantic Canada, everybody's friendly.
Yeah, it's a definite.
It's totally different. Like I had a lot of good experiences when I was there.
Yeah, it's got. I guess it's still even today. I mean, maybe they used to say it's sort of old world feeling. That sort of hospitality.
People are down to earth. Like,
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like when I went there, I was studying at NASCAT, film actually, and some guy became a godfather. It was crazy.
Yeah,
I was like, oh wow.
Well, because traditions, I mean, we're out in the West, right? And the West was, not that Newfoundland and the East Coast wasn't at a time, but it's an earlier history in terms of the history of Canada and North America and settlement and all these things we could talk about. But it was a different frontier. It was, you left where you were to go to an opportunity. So there's that, and everyone says Alberta. Oh, Alberta is full of Newfies. Well, yeah, because there was no work in Newfoundland. Everybody's in Alberta, so people left to
get jobs.
To get jobs. And again, it comes back to that 70s and 80s recession and all the things that were going on, right?
So talk about that. How did that affect you and your family?
Well, it was drastically, in fact. And again, there's a lot of factors when it comes to running a family business and a small business. Most businesses, as we know, if you start a small business, most of them won't succeed for very long. It's just how it goes to a certain extent. And it's not always lack of effort. It's just the realities of being able to make it work. You don't have a massive corporation behind you that can keep feeding it.
Yeah, and then pushing it.
It and advertising it. All these things are really expensive, and they were then. Newspaper ads, all the things you had to do were really expensive things to do. So trying to keep that going was hard. So after a couple of years, that faded, and we had to close.
So how did that feel for you? Like, take me to the experience. Like, what were you thinking?
Well, it was awful in many ways.
Your dad came in. Like, talk about the whole experience.
It was terrible because for him it was his dream to do this kind of thing, and all of us were involved because it's a family thing. And then to have it shut down, I think it led to a real. I mean, he got deeply depressed about it. Then there was no money, almost at all. I mean, it was like, so we had to move out of our house because there was a mortgage that couldn't be paid. I remember, it becomes a sad story of this, but I remember coming home, what grade was I in? Maybe grade 4, I can't remember. And the Jeep was gone. I thought everybody was out. But no, it had been repossessed. It had been taken, right? Because that's what happens. It couldn't be paid for. So it got really bad. We had to leave. We moved back in with my grandmother in her house, which was a relatively small house, and all of us crammed in there. So I mean, lots of people go through these kinds of things.
Yeah.
It's just the realities
It's the
of
reality
life.
of life, unfortunately, right?
Yeah, it's just how it goes. But yeah, it was a big blow
Yeah.
because it was this sort of dream life.
Yeah.
You're living this thing, and then one day it's just not there.
Yeah.
And that's a whole movie in and of itself. You know what I mean? Like there's,
Yeah.
you can see
That's
how.
a very interesting story.
Yeah,
How did your dad take it?
he took it really hard, really, really hard. It was a real kick for him, and I think it was a massive disappointment.
Yeah.
You know, and understandably, and when that happens to people, sometimes, you know, it happens to all of us one way or another. We get disappointed.
Yeah.
When it's a big one, sometimes it can sink you into a hole
Yeah.
that's really hard to climb out of.
Yeah.
I mean, really, really difficult. So it led to a lot of years of just unhappiness.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that happened, if you want to talk about it?
Again, just the inability to function
Yeah.
to a certain degree. And I don't want to talk. I'm not talking ill of them at all because you can understand. You can
It's
understand.
your dream gone, like what you
Yeah,
said?
so it's tough, and those things had happened before because, as I said to him just before he died, because he was disappointed in things even then. He was one of these people who's, you know, he really felt like
Yeah.
he didn't do it right.
Yeah.
But I said, you know, you never. It seems to me you never took into account that the things you wanted to do, you did, and they're very hard things to do.
Yeah.
So you want to be a musician, okay, that's great, but that's a very hard thing to make a living at. People do it. Some of that is skill, some of it is talent, whatever words you want to use. Some of it is time and place, and the right chemistry, and just the stars aligning. When those things don't happen, they're not going to work out the way you really wanted them to. But it's okay. And then you wanted to run a movie theater. Well, now again, you're going to open a business at a time when it was. Even then, in the 70s, I mean, we started to see it in the movie business. Movie theaters in the 60s and 70s went from the concept of the big movie theater, the palace, you know, the big movie palace, to these modules, little cinemas, cineplexes, right? So the small cinemas, like, and you see it, I mean, no, it's not a comment on, like the Cara Theater in Quesnel. That was one theater at one point, I'm pretty sure, but it's split down the middle. So there's two cinemas.
So they could make money from.
Well,
two
and that's an
different-
independent business, so for them it's critical, I'm sure. But Famous Players and Cineplex and these multiplex cinemas changed the way people saw movies. It was no longer you didn't go in to see a CinemaScope David Lean type of incredible experience. The movies were good, but often you have these little boxy cinemas. People. The business end of it lost track of the aesthetic, you know. So the stuff we take for granted now because we have it at home, surround sound and all this stuff. Those were things that were going on, you know. And then they weren't. You didn't go out to see a movie on a 70 millimeter print. All those theaters closed throughout North America because they cost a lot. And then, you know, it took years and years later. Like, was it Quentin Tarantino made that film in 70 millimeter? A few years back, I can't remember. But people who love film want that. They want to make that, and then they want to have an experience of being able to show that. But all that was going on.
Because it's much, right, the
I
frame.
mean, and the frame is bigger. The impact of the image, particularly, it's not a digital image. It's an analog image.
And the grains they get with it.
Yeah,
Right?
it's
you
just
cannot mimic that.
you
no
can't
matter
mimic
what
it.
you do.
If you try, it'll look really bad most of the time, right? And I mean, as much as film in the optical sense, traditional film is an illusion. It's not. There's people who really like it. The digital aspect is. Some people think it's like it's fake. You know what I mean? It's not that. It's not that same feel.
It's very sharp, I guess you could say. And
It
then-
can be, and it's gotten so much better.
Yeah.
It's gotten so much
with
better.
the new lenses, right?
Yeah.
All the cine lenses and things, but the lenses are so expensive.
And all of it, the processing in general has gotten better, so things are more pleasing to look at. But anyway, it comes back to overall the film, the movie show, the business was changing. And to open a large cinema and try to make a go of it is a hard thing at any time. But it was a very hard choice. And he had a stable union job as professional because it's IATSE. I mean, projectionists were IATSE members. It was a well-paid job, and he took that risk to say, no, I'm going to do this. And so it was a hard thing to do.
lose it all, right?
But it's also a hard choice to make. So when it doesn't work out the way you think it should, it's not, again, it's not due to lack of effort or passion or work ethic or any of those things. It's just the realities of the milieu you're living in, right? You can't overcome everything. So, but it was, everything was changing. It's another one of those times where the nature of entertainment was shifting. It really was. And then that's around the era where we start to see pay TV, like Star Choice and Super Channel. So people are staying home and they're getting cable, they're getting all this stuff.
For much cheaper. Right?
Much cheaper, and it's like
it's
like
comfortable, right? You
yeah,
don't have to
you're
go buy
at home.
popcorn.
Yeah, it's like now, like everybody, streaming services are the equivalent, right? Like you pay your $12, $14 a month. You got Disney Plus, you can watch it all.
Yeah.
Am I going to go to a movie, or am I going to turn on my 55-inch television, which we all people have these days, and my pretty good sound system, and sit at home and have dinner and eat popcorn, and the kids don't have to go anywhere and all this stuff. So. The same kinds of things were happening. Yeah. We forget that this stuff it's kind of ongoing in terms of technology, and then the economics of it. Corporations want to make money, for better or worse. And that's, that's a bad thing on some of those, but also without that mentality, we wouldn't be seeing the kinds of films we see, where companies are investing hundreds of millions of dollars to make epic films, especially nowadays. That's kind of back, the bigness of films, right? Yeah, so all that was going on at that time. So it's an interesting part of film history and my history, all of it. It all ties together, Yeah.
So what happened after that? How things changed? Did it change? So
Yeah.
you were leaving your grandparents' house.
Yeah.
I guess was your grandfather disappointed? With you?
No, I don't think so. He was by then. He was getting in. He was in his 80s.
Got used to it.
He got used to it. It's just like whatever. But he was. He could be a cranky. I won't use the words I want to use because he'd be a cranky man. But he had a soft side too, which he never liked to show. But he showed it to the kids once in a while. Right? He had that thing where he was quite. He was older, but he had a lot of respiratory trouble. Because apparently, as it turns out, he had tuberculosis way back. His first wife died of tuberculosis. They found when he was around 90. He died when he was 90. Yeah. Before that, he was quite ill. He was constantly congested. His lungs, he couldn't breathe. He spent years like this. They found scar tissue on his lung, and the doctor said the only thing we can think that could have caused that kind of scar tissue is that he had tuberculosis. But he had never been treated for it. Yeah. So he was living with that. Anyway, so that was happening. It was
did it get fixed or?
No, because he was 89 at that time. Once that was kind of, he died when he was 90, and he died of congestion. His lungs were, he couldn't fight it anymore because he was 90 years old. Was the other thing. So, but yeah, it was so the grandparents and the house was interesting because it had no central heating. We still had a wood stove in the kitchen. Yeah. And this is not out in the woods somewhere. Yeah. This is like in St. John's on a regular street. Yeah. Everybody else had a furnace, but we didn't. We had one wood stove in the kitchen. And Newfoundland's cold climate.
It's very cold.
It's freezing, guys. And a lot of snow and a lot of ice. And so winter would come, and you got one source of heat. Yeah. So it was
what did you guys do? How did you?
Well, in Newfoundland, there's a tradition of, they talk about, you ever heard of a kitchen party? No. You go, the party.
There's kitchen party in Halifax all over.
Oh, right? The same thing. Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah, kitchen party. Yeah. That probably has to do with the fact that these things started when people had one stove in their kitchen. Yeah. So everybody got in the kitchen, that's where the heat is, and you played music or whatever you do. We kind of lived in the kitchen. Seriously, you just spent a lot of time in the kitchen because the heat was on, right? Yeah. So, you got 7 people. We had a couple of cats. Yeah. I ended up adopting a dog followed me home, which was a Great Dane. He was a massive thing. So it was this crazy kind of thing going on. So it was a lot. That was tense. There was also good parts of it.
The family party is good, but so did you sleep in the kitchen too or no?
No. We managed to split that up anyway, so that was good.
Was it
but
cold?
It was freaking cold.
They were cold?
It was freaking cold. It was cold. You wake up with a layer, because you get condensation on the floor, and all the floors, my grandmother loves this canvas, and it's like a linoleum, just cheaper. I don't even know if you can get it anymore. It's almost like felt for a roof, but it had a finish on it. And she loved this stuff, and she had rolls of it that she probably hoarded away for years. And it was all over the house. So it was very slick, kind of this floor. When you get condensation, and in the morning, that would be frozen sometimes. Like you had this thin layer. Yeah, it was just, I mean, it was rustic, to say the least. So that could only go on for so long.
Yeah.
We moved once around 1983, maybe 84. And then by 85, we left and came to Vancouver.
Oh, much difference, right? Much more, right?
Yeah, very different. But again, it was like leaving everything behind. Everything. Like nothing could come.
The movies, the cameras. And
Everything was left. Everything was left or sold.
so how do you travel?
We traveled by train.
Yeah.
And we did that because you could take the shipping, you could ship things.
Yeah.
And so we ended up finding these, I found these tea crates, you know, the tea crates?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
With
Apple,
the-
is it Apple boxes?
No, it's just for tea.
Yeah.
They're strictly for tea, and you still see them. They have the sort of panel size with the sort of very thin metal ribbing that holds it together.
Yeah.
I found a bunch of those outside some warehouse, and because I knew we were moving, I mentioned it to my dad, so we went down in the van and just took them, and we packed what stuff we brought in these tea crates and sort of reinforced it with 1x2.
Yeah.
And these were the crates we sent across the country with very little in them. And they could travel by train. You can't fly that stuff. I
No.
mean, even then, if you
so,
could,
so expensive.
it'd be vastly expensive. So we took the train, took the bus to the ferry, took the ferry to Halifax, the train, Halifax to Vancouver was the train ride.
Halifax to Vancouver.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So
That's-
that
that
was
sounds so amazing. Like,
that was how many days?
how long? Yeah,
It was
exactly.
like 5 days.
5 days.
Yeah.
That's not bad. Was it like scary, like the snow and just,
No, I mean, I still, when I go anywhere, I try to take a train ride.
Oh, wow.
If a country has a train, I want to ride the train. And if I can travel by train, I'll travel by train.
so expensive now. It's like, it has become
It
a
has.
luxury item.
Well, in Canada, it's ridiculous. You can't.
I was looking at the
You can't.
prices, right?
Which is ironic for a country like Canada with the
Yeah.
spaces and the talk of, we're trying to create a better environment. Train travel is trains are one of the most efficient means of transport. Steel wheels on steel rails, no friction. That's why trains. What's the iron ore train in? I just watched the new Grand Tour. Did you ever watch Grand Tour?
No.
The car show.
No, how-
Jeremy Clarkson and.
Maybe I have, but
James
just
May.
I forget names. That's the
Anyway,
problem.
I think I'm not much of a car guy, but the show is great. They're the funniest people in the world. Anyway, there's the iron ore train in Mauritania is 4 miles long. This is full of ore cars, right? So this is what trains you can move that much material with a couple of engines, right? Strange in Canada, we don't do that. It's the size of the country, and the reason we have Canada as we see it.
It's because of the train.
Because of the train.
Yeah,
Why? How was Ottawa going to get BC to join the Confederation?
Yeah.
Well, without a railroad, it ain't happening. The railroad was the promise. That was the thing, the connection. Because looking at that history, BC at that time, the colonial BC, was really a north-south relationship with California and Washington Territories and Alaska and the gold rush, which moved all the way through all of that, right? That was the relationships socially. Eastern Canada may as well have been the moon at times. It was so far away. And how do you get there? You take a ship for down around, you had to go around Cape Horn. This is before the Panama Canal, the history of connecting Canada. So it's ironic that we don't have it anymore. It's ironic that it was a thing that was sort of let go and not more invested in by the government. And the government in particular needs to get behind that kind of transportation.
Even China, they updated their.
Oh yeah,
Right, they have like some of the fastest.
they have some of the
trains.
best train service in the world.
France, they has it. All Europe, they travel.
Well, you're again like I was in Portugal last year,
Yeah.
2 years ago. Sorry, a year and a half ago, and you get on the subway in downtown Lisbon or Lisboa, and you get on and you go to the train station. You get off the subway, the metro. You go right to the platform, and you can go anywhere. You can go to Paris. You can go to Frankfurt. You can go to Madrid. You can go anywhere you want, and it's all connected, right?
I know, and it's cheap.
it's relative to, the high-speed trains can be a little more expensive.
Well, it's luxury, right?
Yeah, but I like train travel. So I mean, the great thing about Portugal is that you could go, if you wanted to take the train, you go from Lisbon to Porto in like 3 hours, and it's a slow train. It's not a big country, but I was there. I walked from Lisbon to Porto. It was
You walked?
Camino, one of the pilgrimage routes.
Yeah. How long did that take?
That took about a month.
You walked? You walked for 1 month?
Yeah, my girlfriend and I walked.
Walked.
Almost all of it. We had to skip a few sections because it was just highway, so
Yeah.
we took the train for like 2 stops, right? But it's right there. It's always right there.
Why walk?
To do it, just for the sake of doing it.
Oh, wow.
Because again, you want to talk, being an actor in particular, or performer, writer, anything creative, the only thing that can really feed it is real experience.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know,
Any
I know,
experience
yeah.
you have.
The struggles, happiness,
Yeah,
everything.
and
right?
just the experience of going, why are you doing that? It's like Edmund Hillary, why'd you climb Everest? Because it's there.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good enough reason. Why not do it? So it's that kind of stuff. Why do it? Walk it because now I know what that's like.
Yeah.
And I liked it.
Yeah.
So there may be a use for that.
In the film, right?
Who knows? Or
Right,
a
because
play
it comes out, right?
It comes out. And
Yeah.
you may not even realize
Yeah.
until it's happening, like, oh, wait a minute. This experience I had is feeding this project or whatever you're doing, right? So anyway, we took the train.
Yeah.
We arrived in Vancouver, and my parents had like one friend in Vancouver,
Yeah.
right? We didn't. I mean, it's
very
again, it was the
tricky.
other side of the world.
Yeah.
One friend in Vancouver, and she had agreed that we could stay with her and her husband, and she lived off Commercial Drive on 3rd Avenue in a 1-bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
Her and her husband. He was a massive record collector, so he had about 2,000 albums on shelves, like just these shelves that were just so really crammed.
Was it CD? Was it vinyl?
No, vinyl.
Vinyl.
Yeah, he used to do I think co-op radio show. He was really into, I think his big collection was reggae.
Oh, wow.
He had a lot of reggae and
Because
that.
it's such a happy songs, right?
Yeah,
Makes
yeah.
you dance and stuff.
So he had his name was Stan, and I don't know his last name. Anyway, yeah, I haven't seen him in years. But either way, we had one friend, and she had agreed that it would come out. She'd help us sort of sort out. But yeah, it was we had no money, like almost no money at all.
Were you like stressed out? Like,
Oh, my parents were. They were like, it was insanely stressed,
kids
stressful.
and stuff. How many
So
kids?
myself and by that time 2 sisters.
2 sisters. Oh,
And
wow,
I
that's-
was 15, 16, they're a little younger. And so we, it's another one of these sob stories. We came out the train station and got on the bus, which was the Main Street bus. Went up Main Street, turned onto Broadway, and went to the welfare office because we had nothing.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing we did when we got off the train. The very first thing in Vancouver was to go, we got nothing, you got to help. And they did, thankfully. I mean, thank God the system is there. As cheap as it seems sometimes, without it, people are in real trouble. But we had to stay. We stayed in the 1-bedroom, sleeping on the floor in the living room, and they're working. So there was a bit of that. Then we stayed in a couple of hotels because we had to find a place to live. So we ended up renting a townhouse on 12th Avenue, 12th Victoria, and lived there for a few years. And then I went to Van Tech High School, Vancouver Technical School, which is on East Broadway. And now I'd been in theater in Newfoundland with sort of a community-based theater, but they had classes for young people. And you do the classes, and much like what I'm teaching now, improv class and things like that, scene study. And I was young, like 12 years old, and some of the kids were a lot older. But we do these classes, and then you do plays, you do productions. So I had been doing that.
Yeah. Was your dad proud you were doing that?
Oh yeah, he loved that stuff.
He was like, yes.
He loved that stuff. That he could get behind that stuff, right?
Yeah.
That was 100% support, no question ever about these things. So we came out, and I went to Van Tech. Van Tech didn't have a theater program. It was East Van School. It was it was built as a trades-oriented school, so they had a huge automotive program.
Yeah.
Like took cars apart and put it back together.
Yeah.
They had hairdressing. You could
Hairdressing.
take hairdressing. You probably still can.
Oh, wow.
So it was vocational. You could get in. I think by grade 11, you could do part. It could be academic,
Yeah.
and then you could do hairdressing, or you could do mechanics, so that you were getting into the trade and getting experience.
Yeah.
But they didn't have a theater program. They had a great visual arts program.
Yeah.
That's where the arts money went in that school. It went to the visual arts program, which was great because I took art.
It's a course.
I took art. I wasn't particularly a good artist or anything, but I like art.
Yeah.
So I took art, and but we didn't have a theater program, so myself and 3 friends
Yeah.
basically created our own theater program.
In the school.
We just started doing stuff. So we'd start doing lunchtime improv.
Yeah.
So we'd take the drama room and it would be packed. It'd just be packed, and we'd do improv. And then we got into doing inter-school tournaments.
Yeah.
So we had the schools would come to our school, we'd compete. We go out to Surrey, to go to like Surrey Central. We go to the west side, and we had these ongoing exchanges. It was really cool.
Did the school get behind it after a while?
The school totally got behind it.
Are you serious?
Yeah, because the drama teacher, who wasn't really a drama teacher, he was an English teacher, but he loved theater and he wanted more of this. There was a basic theater class,
Yeah.
but he was like quite excited. Like he got 4 of these guys who wanted to do stuff, and he got right behind it, totally supported it. Like, yeah, do what you want. And so we started doing stuff and like writing plays, and then I started writing my own plays.
Yeah.
Again, school got behind it. So we produced it. There used to be a drama festival called Van Fest for high schools in Vancouver. And it was held annually at the Vancouver East Cultural Center.
Yeah.
And it was a high school theater festival. So in '87, I wrote a play for it. And that was the production the school did for Van Fest.
What was it? What was it?
The play was
Yeah.
a play called Quiet Please. It was about a writer
Yeah.
and who couldn't get any peace.
Yeah.
He could not get any peace to get his writing done. So it's one of these types of stories.
So we had 10 kids.
Yeah, well, he had weird friends, right?
Talk about it a little bit. This sounds
That play? Oh, God. What was that? It was situation comedy, kind of like, I loved Fawlty Towers at that point. You know, the show Fawlty Towers, John Cleese, Connie Booth.
I'm so bad. I forget.
It's about the
thing.
hotel. They had made 12 episodes. Apparently they're doing a reboot of it, which scares the heck out of me because it's like, it can't be what it was. It'll never be anything like it. But I love that kind of situation comedy stuff. So it was kind of trying to get that feel.
Was it that English movie, English series? The thing?
Yeah, it's
that
English.
happened? Okay.
Yeah, that was an English series.
I think I know
for
which one
sure.
you're talking about. Yeah, it was funny, right?
Yeah, it was very funny.
Okay, good.
Very funny. Anyway, so it was that kind of trying to get that kind of feel. So he was a writer. He was married, but his wife didn't really understand the writing thing, that kind of stuff. He was always kind of a bit angry because he couldn't get anything done. Then these friends end up showing up, and the friend was a mortician.
Oh.
So he was a very strange. My friend Larry in high school played this. He's very tall and thin, and we made him very pale, and he had slick back hair, and they end up showing up and becoming annoying, and it's just this kind of
Dynamic.
half hour of frustration. And then they think, because the writer gets so frustrated, he disappears, but the furnace is broken. He's gone into the basement, and they think he's gone to like off himself or something, and they get really worried trying to figure out where he went.
Yeah.
And then they think, oh my God, he's gotten so frustrated, he's going to kill himself or whatever, right? But he's just in the basement. So it's one of these situation type things. Anyway, I can't even remember the ending.
No.
'Cause
How long did it take you to put that together?
the play?
Yeah. Because it's a lot of work. It's not just.
That was a one-act play, and I wrote it in a couple of weeks with my dad, kind of helped me a bit. And then we went to the school, and we got to rehearse after school in the drama room, in the auditorium. And we'd be there till 9 at night. And we were totally allowed to be there. I don't know if schools are as open these days, maybe. There was even a point, and I probably shouldn't say it, where we ended up getting the keys to the school.
Oh, wow.
We were given the keys to the school. So we'd go in and work on stuff we were doing in the auditorium.
Yeah.
So we'd build the sets. If we wanted paint, we actually went and stole paint from the art department. And they found out.
Yeah.
I remember the teacher, I won't say any names, just in case someone kind of went, we know, you could have, next time just ask, but it's okay. So again, they even had support when we did it kind of underhanded, but we really wanted to get stuff done. We just did stuff. And then we got up above the stage at Van Tech. It might still be there. Probably is. There's a little walkway. It's only about this big. And then there's a full wall above the stage, part of the, I guess, proscenium, or part of the fly loft. And we painted a mural on there, a massive mural, standing on chairs and planks above this, 20 feet above the stage and stuff, after hours. And we called our company the Four Horsemen, because there was 4 of us. So we painted this massive mural of our, I forget.
Who did most of the painting?
We all did a little bit, but we had one of the guys was a really great cartoonist artist, even in high school.
So he did all the...
He did all the real detail, and then we've helped him fill it in. But he was very good. We do whenever, like that first play I did, he did the program and made and stuff like. So and then we did a few more of those, 2 more shows of that. Then we did an improvised play, which had much like the film I'm working on with the students at Story Institute now, where you have an outline, but you're just making it up. And we referenced pop culture things like mostly Back to the Future. At that time it was a big deal. And so we did that at the school, and then we did it at downtown at the Back Alley Theater, which was the improv theater. And I'm not even sure, I know the theater's still there downtown. I think it's on, is it on Howe Street? I can't remember now. But we rented it and did some performances there. So we were, just trying to do our own thing.
So what happened after that?
After that, after high school, my friends went to film school in Toronto.
Oh, wow.
They went to Ryerson, 2 of the guys.
Oh, I remember Ryerson. I didn't go there. I applied. That wasn't good enough.
They went to Ryerson.
So hard to get in.
It's hard, I think it was hard then too. Maybe not as hard as it is now.
No, it's insane now.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of these things have become a little harder because the interest is even.
Yeah, the more the interest increased, right? And then the harder it is to get in.
Harder to get in.
I wanted to do the grad studies there.
Yeah.
Well, I got it somewhere better.
Well, there you go. There you go. It all works out, right?
Yeah, it does.
Don't always get what you want. You get what you need,
Yeah,
as the song goes, right? But they went to Ryerson, and I got into help running a youth theater company in Vancouver. So I became the general manager of the youth theater company with my co-founder. So I wrote plays for that, and we wrote I was getting right into things like Sam Shepard and that kind of drama stuff. So, and it was stuff about angst and teenage youth, young people. So I wrote and directed plays there, and also wrote grants. And we built a theater in South Vancouver in a warehouse, which we would rent out to other groups and whatnot. And so I was doing that stuff for a few years. There wasn't a heck of a lot of money in it, but I got, I was like 20.
You're enjoying your life.
Yeah, and I was 20, 21 by then.
Was your dad helping?
He helped in some ways. If I needed advice, he always was the guy, especially technical things. I don't like the technical sides of machines, and it drives me nuts, and it always did. But I remember one time we had this big show we did. It was an original musical written in Toronto. We had gotten the composer. It was electronic. It was MIDI at the time, so not a lot. He was one of the only people I think who could actually play it. He had all these the old Mac computers, and
also so he's on computer, right?
Yeah, it was on computer at a time when it was a little more difficult to do those things, right? So he came out and played the show, and he was the composer, and we built an environmental set, so the whole theater space was a street. So we built the sidewalks, we built the mock storefront, and one of them was a bank of televisions, 9 televisions, and part of the play took place on these screens. So we shot the video for those scenes, and they would appear on like the old movies where they look in the store window and the TVs are on and everybody's watching. It was like that. So we had to set up the 9 TVs, and then it needed it needed a sync signal, a black signal between pieces. So there'd be live action, then it would cut to the TVs. And people had to stand in the environment. The audience was just standing there or sitting on the curbs we built. We built them high. They would have to sit there and sort of be with the actors. They were all around you.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
The kids.
so amazing. Like
it was
wow.
a crazy thing we did. And I couldn't figure out how to get this blue screen.
Yeah.
So again, it's just an example. I called my dad.
Yeah.
We had 2 VHS machines, so I ran that stuff. So you play, you'd stop one and run the so you cut between things with just two VCRs. Yeah. But the way to do it was to just put a cable into the video in signal, and somehow it created a blank screen.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, but my dad just put the, and he'd be able to you know how to do this stuff. Plug it in. So I was able to solve this problem, but he solved it.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, "Oh, how'd you do that? How'd you do that?" Like, well, it's very technical. It wasn't. It was an RCA jack. That's to go. But it's stuff like, so he was there, you know, to help with that stuff at times. Yeah. So those things went on. I had an agent. I had actually very prominent agent in Vancouver now, who I was doing a play in the Fringe Festival that the company was producing. We had 2 companies actually. It's complicated, but the second company was oriented toward adults, not youth. Yeah. So we were doing a play. I was producing it, and one of the actors got a part in the film and said, "I quit," left. But we had 2 weeks, and we'd already put all this time in. We paid. The director was paid half his wages, right? The other actors were involved, so I had to go in and be in the play.
So you took the position of...
I had to take the position because there was nobody else to do it. Yeah. So I had to learn the whole thing. And they've been rehearsing for quite a while. I had to learn the whole thing in 2 weeks. And it was quite a graphic, grungy play, drug addiction and just all this kind of stuff. So I was a heroin addict. And it was grungy. But we did it at the Fringe, and the reviews were... it's just awful. It was great. One of the best reviews I could... I haven't had many reviews over the last few years in particular, but back then, the reviews they just slaughtered the play. And some of it was pretty justified. I didn't write it, so that's fine. But then it said, who wrote it? It might have been, I won't say any names. Anyway, the review ended it, and as for the actors, I won't say anything. They've been through enough. It's like, and I read that and went, it's not untrue. But anyway, this agent was in the audience, and at the end of the second to last performance, he goes, "Hi, I'm so-and-so. Do you need an agent?" I said, "Well, I'm not looking for an agent," but he said, "Well, I'm an agent. This is my agency." I said, so anyway, he ended up representing me for a couple of years, but we kind of...
Did you end up any films or?
No, you know, it's funny because I was running the company, and that was full-time, and I had to have a job too. Like there wasn't enough money.
Oh, wow.
So you had to have some other job, and I worked at a restaurant, coffee shop, whatever you could do to get by and then keep going. And so I went out to things, but we had agreed upon a look that really wasn't working. I had really long hair at the time, leather jacket, you know. I remember going to one audition over on the North Shore at the studio there. I guess was it Canal? Maybe, I don't know, I can't remember now. Anyway, the studio's still there. Going into the audition, and I'd seen the casting director before, dressed, looking this way. He was sending me out for we were going out for these tough guy roles. And I'd walk in, and I'm like, you know, 5'0" and like, I'm not a tough guy. I could pretend, but it wouldn't even really be acting. It wouldn't really necessarily, especially when you're young too, right? I didn't have gray hair, or like, you know, wrinkly eyes or anything. I was like, you know. And I read for it, she said, "You know what, you read great. It's great. But here's the thing," and you can tell your agent this. "For the roles you're reading for, I'm never going to cast you in these roles. If I could see you read for something else,
maybe.
There's a chance, maybe. We don't know. But the roles you're reading for, it's never going to happen." I went back and told him, and was like, "Okay, we need to come up with something." He was resistant. He really believed in the approach he had, and I stopped arguing about it and went back and ran the movie theater, and not the movie, the youth theater, and sort of let that slide at that point, which is fine. But that's not my first agent.
Yeah.
The first agent I got in Vancouver, just after we got there, by the following summer, and this is back in the 80s when, Vancouver, there's some stuff going on, but it was all still kind of starting.
Yeah.
There was a lot going on. So there's a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
So this agent found out about Go Down. He takes me on. So now I got an agent, right? Went out and did a couple of little things and did some promotional stuff for some franchise, like a little video thing, a couple of things like that. And then I went down to get a check for a little gig I did. It wasn't much, like $50 or $100. It was almost nothing. But we went down to get the check, and I was underage, so my mom went with me. And we get down there, and the building isn't even there anymore. I know that. Anyway, there's an apartment building. Go in, and the assistant meets us at the door. He says, "I need to talk to you."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Okay." Right this way. So we go upstairs to the offices, and like people are moving furniture out. It's like, what's going on here? What's this, right? Like they actually were carrying, guys were loading a truck.
Yeah.
So we go in, and he's like, "Just come with me." He's like, and he takes us into this small room at the back. He goes, "Well, here's the thing. I know you're here to get your check. I have the check. It's fine. But so-and-so, again, I won't even say first names because, so-and-so is in jail." I said, and my mother's like, "He's in jail? What for? Like, is it criminal? Because, he's representing people. I was underage."
Yeah.
Well, no, he's in jail for fraud. So that was the first agent.
God.
Yeah, so, this line of work or whatever is full of all kinds of things, right?
Yeah,
So that was the first. Yeah. The second one was nothing like that. And now is a hugely high profile agency. I mean, and very slick and very.
So what brought you to Prince George?
Well, Prince George. I first came to Prince George when I first came to Caribou in 1999, and what brought me there was working at Barkerville Historic Town.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, doing at that time the street interpretation and street music and stuff. So that I had gone back to theater school, a 1-year program at Capilano University.
Oh, they have a very good film program too.
Yeah,
Really,
they did then.
Beautiful.
It was, so I went to that. It was a brand new program. I didn't want to commit to a 4-year thing because I didn't have the money. I had to borrow money.
But sometimes I think you don't need 4 years, right? You just get 1 year and you can just develop, right?
Yeah, and again, some people have a very strong ethic when it comes to acting, degrees and whatnot. I think it's useful, but it isn't.
They put a lot of history in it, which you don't need, right? Sometimes
the interest is good.
Sometimes,
and you can find these things out.
Yeah.
I'm not against it, but it wasn't what I was doing at the time. I knew I had to get a student loan. It was another one of those phases in life where you're sitting there going, "What the heck am I going to do?"
4 years of paying, right?
What am I going? And I wanted to get back. I had dropped out of things because the theater company I was running that kind of folded.
Yeah.
Because again, it's a nonprofit organization. It was very difficult to keep it going, and that kind of fell to the wayside. So I spent a couple of years going, "I want to do this," but now I've lost track of even how. So I need to do something that gets the wheels sort of turning. So I was like 27 or something, 28, and I went back
And study for 1 year.
Went to this practical, again, it's more of a hands-on production-oriented program. So you're doing the stuff.
Yeah.
The idea was you knew enough where you come in and do these productions, which we did. And someone mentioned, I was doing Our Town, the play Our Town, where I played the character. He's the stage manager, but he's telling the story. He's the narrator. And the sets were like a house, and then it was a town. He's talking about a town. And the real stage manager of the show said, "I just worked at a place. You'd be really good there. You might like it." And it was Barkerville. Yeah. And I said, "Oh, well," she goes, "I think they have auditions in the spring. I'll let you know." This is like around Christmas. Yeah. Then we didn't talk about it. And then I was at home with my ex-girlfriend, and the phone rang one night, and it was this stage manager. She says, "Oh, remember that thing I told you about, the historic stuff?" I said, "Oh, yeah." She goes, "Well, the audition's tomorrow." Oh, wow. I said, "Oh." She goes, "Yeah, like here's the name, the contact name, here's the phone number. give them a call. They might have space left. I'm like, all right, I'll give them a call. So I called. They said, yeah, you can come in at the end of the day because we have a busy day. There's a lot of people auditioning. So I went at the end, and it was like the night before. I'm like, well, what am I going to do?
Yeah, you're not ready, right?
What am I going to do?
That's where experience kicks in.
Yeah, and they wanted a song, and they wanted you, if you could play an instrument, and sing a song. I'm like, what the hell? I had been playing music, but for a year and a half or so, or 2 years, I didn't really play any music. But I had a guitar, and so I thought, well, what can I do? I said, well, I'll do a segment of Our Town, which I had done months before, so I just went over it.
Yeah.
And, okay, now what song can I do that's really simple, or I could do simply? So I did You Can't Always Get What You Want by the Rolling Stones. Yeah. And so I went in with this song and this monologue. So I walked in, it was the audition was on the west side of Vancouver in what turns out was a daycare in this community center. So I go in, I'm thinking I'm going to do the Our Town thing. And I walked in, and the room was actually set up much like the stage setting for the play. Yeah. There was a little kid's toy house, playhouse. There was a little bench or something in the middle with like this little trellis looking thing. And then there was this cutout number chart that was a tree, a paper tree on the wall. Oh, wow. And in the play, there's a big butternut tree that he refers to. And we had done it in the play with a gobo, I think, to create the sense of sitting under a tree. And so I walked in and went, the set is here. So I just did it exactly the way I did it on stage. And ended it, and when the last line is, and then there's the big butternut tree. No. Because the character is from, it's sort of north, it's like Boston kind of thing, right? So and it was like, it was laid out for me. And then I did the song, and I made the panel who were auditioning me, I made them sing it.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So that, then you're hired pretty well, because like I made them sing it with me, which is exactly the kind of thing that we're still doing in Barkerville. You want people to participate. So that led me here quite a while ago now.
So how long have you been at Barkerville now?
I started there in '99. It's seasonal, so it's summer primarily, 1999. And I missed 2 years because I had another historical type of theater musical thing I was doing in Vancouver in 2005 and 6. So this makes it 23 seasons.
You did 23 seasons?
23 seasons.
Why do you like it so much?
It pays me, so that's a big reason. I mean, you got it. This is the thing about acting, right? It's something I try to instill in teaching. It's like, it's not that you can't or you won't. It's like there's things going to come along that are what we're going to call bread and butter. Stuff that pays you.
Exactly.
And if you can enjoy it, much the better. Again, I like it because it is historical. It's there's costumes. The sense of theater is very real. It's totally different, and we're losing that kind of feel sometimes in live stuff.
Yeah, everything is becoming so scripted now, right?
Yeah.
And then sometimes it loses
organic humanity. It can lose. So we get there's a lot of freedom to play with what you're doing. So I love that stuff. Music, I like to play music. So this year in the show, again, I'll play the banjo and the mandolin probably. So I don't play a lot of music these days. So that's my opportunity where I get to do that.
So what kind of instruments do you play?
I play banjo, pretty okay. I play a bit of mandolin, guitar. I have played bass, electric bass, but I'm not a bass player. But I can make it work. That's it,
So you teach now, right?
Yeah.
So talk about that a little bit, because you started from all this crazy stuff. Your journey is so insane. I saw a whole documentary in my head.
And there's more than that. There's this, touching on things. There's all kinds of weird.
Your whole life story. You could make a whole film.
It's weird stuff.
Have you thought about writing a book?
I'm always thinking about writing a book.
I'm serious. Because there's so many people, they have such a boring life, and they have books out there, and nobody watches. The people make fun of them. But your life story is so interesting, right?
Well,
I know you skip a lot of it, right?
Yeah.
That I think you should write a book, and then put all your life story in it.
Yeah,
right?
that'd be a thing.
Because the childhood stuff, nobody, you know,
Yeah, it's
like, I don't know, people haven't seen stuff like that, right?
no,
Cold, freezing.
no. You have to
right?
go in our society. You have to go far away to see.
Yeah.
Not that I lived in. I mean, it wasn't. It's not a. It's not. You know, it's not. It's not a sob story. It's not. I mean, things were hard.
But it's a struggle, right? That's
it
what
was
makes
struggle.
you.
It was struggle.
Yeah, that's
It
what
was-
makes. That's you can never give up, right? So
And-
that's
yeah.
the reason, right?
And
So-
you can forget that those things happened. You can forget the struggle sometimes. I mean, and you know what I mean? Like what you achieve
Yeah.
based on the struggle is a big deal.
It is,
It's
you
a
know,
big deal. It can
because
be.
some people they have everything handed to them, right?
Yeah,
and
well-
they still screw up. And then some
Yeah.
people they don't have much, but
And
they,
in the acting world, I mean, I've seen people, you know, get
Yeah.
into major things,
Yeah.
and not all of them, and I don't mean to be biased, but a lot of them had,
Yeah.
you know, again, we came to Vancouver, we were on welfare,
Yeah.
and were for a few years. Like, It was really hard to get things going. But people had, they had a house to go live in with their parents,
yeah,
and they could take the time
yeah,
to wait for the auditions, and they could take the time to not necessarily make a lot of money because they had that basic,
yeah,
the very basic infrastructure. You know, they had it, and they didn't need to worry about having 2 part-time jobs. Or I've worked as many as when I lived in Vancouver, I worked as many as 3 jobs at a time because it's always been expensive.
yeah. It's an expensive city.
And now it's just gone.
No, it's
beyond-
just good luck.
It's on beyond belief. It's not even. It's just not attainable. But it's always been a lot, you know. So you had to, and you still want a life. You know, in your early 20s, you want to go out and have fun. You want to get drunk. You want to do. I played in bands in downtown. You know, there's wildness and stuff in that too that are whole other stories.
You've done
Yeah.
some wild stuff. Huh?
Yeah, again, if I had one passion, it's not so much now, but was to play in a band. That's, I mean, everybody wants to do that. It's like, woo, you're a band, you know.
Although everybody loves you as soon as you're in a band.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're any good. Like,
Yeah.
you're a
Oh,
band.
you're in a band.
Yeah,
That's it.
so
That's
I mean,
it.
and I love that stuff. I mean, I still kind of have an affinity for it, but it's not as in the foreground as it used to be, which is fine because you can't do everything.
We should consider writing a book because
Yeah.
there's a lot you haven't talked about, but I think it should be a really great story. Then maybe you should see if you can script it, get it scripted,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then, see if you can get it produced because I
It'd
think
be
it'd be a really good story.
It's an
right?
interesting story. I mean, you don't think about it oftentimes in terms of your own
A
story.
lot of people
sometimes.
have boring stories, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of people this is an interesting story, right? Coming from all of it from the other side of Canada to
here,
here,
yeah,
and then now you ended up in Prince George, right?
Yeah. Well, back to the teaching. So I worked in Barkerville for all those years, and I'll be going back this year. And did you meet James Douglas?
I don't know. I
Anyway.
forget names. That's the
Anyway,
thing.
James.
I know. I remember faces, but names, for some reason, movies, names, everything, all the names.
Sure.
Are,
Either way, but James, a good friend of mine, he had worked in Barkerville as an interpreter and actor, and then eventually he was an administrator, and was basically in charge of sort of media and media relations and those things. So for years he did that job, and we had a good rapport.
Yeah.
We still have a good rapport. And then a few years ago, in 2017, we made the movie The Doctor's Case with the Stephen King story.
Yeah.
So he applied for the Dollar Babies programs, which is now done. I think the King organization has said it's finished.
Yeah.
And that's where, for $1,
Yeah.
you can have the right
Yeah.
to make a Stephen King short story into a film.
Oh,
And there's
wow.
been 40 some odd, or maybe more now, of those Dollar Baby films made. So he found a story called The Doctor's Case that Stephen King wrote for an anthology of Sherlock Holmes stories to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the first publication of Sherlock Holmes.
Oh wow.
So he came to me and said, "Do you want to play Sherlock Holmes?" I thought, well, that's weird. I'm not tall enough or whatever. Yeah, sure. So he applied for the thing, got the thing. So we made the film. We made it primarily at Craig Derrick Castle in Victoria.
Yeah.
And, it was a pretty big deal. Went to 25 festivals around the world, won some awards. Denise Crosby was in it, of Star Trek fame, Pet Cemetery fame. William Davis was in it. Smoking Man on X-Files, if you remember that episode.
I remember.
He's a legendary Canadian actor,
Yeah.
right? So he was in it. Michael Coleman played Watson. It was really his story. And Michael is the person who started Story Institute in Vancouver. He's well known for the TV series Once Upon a Time and a lot of other stuff. He's done an awful lot of stuff. So he started that in Vancouver. James got the idea to open a branch here in Prince George. Yeah. So a couple of years ago, this is the third program coming into the second year now. So back in 2022, at the end of the Barkerville season, he said, I want to talk to you about this school that we're doing in Prince George. There might be a place for you. Yeah. I said, okay. I said, well, I got to go to Portugal, so I can't get involved now. He said, when you get back, we'll talk about the new year and see what comes. So I got back, got in touch, said, what? He said, well, right now, he was doing the diploma program that we're doing now, the professional actor program. He said, you could get involved in the working actor program. And the working actor program is about creating your own work.
Wow.
It's about actually, making short films, all kinds of, we did live stuff last year, we did all kinds of different things. But the students are making the work. And your job as the instructor is to facilitate that creativity using what experience we have to help that along. You know what I mean? So I started doing the program last year in the summer, 2 days a week. Really, that part of it then was focused on more of the live aspect. But we created, for instance, we created a comedy sketch show. Oh wow! Which we did 2 live performances of, but we also shot all of them as a comedy show, like a pilot style comedy show. The students, not only they wrote the scripts, I helped them and James helped them develop the ideas, but it was their work. So they wrote the scripts, they performed in it, they performed all the other, the cameras, sound, lighting. So they did all aspects of that as one example, and there were other projects as well. So that's a cool thing to be part of, because to me that's the fun stuff. Making your own thing. Finding a way to do something. Just do something. So this is it's a pretty cool program.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So you're teaching now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So you like it and everything like that, right?
I do, yeah.
What do you like about teaching?
Well, again, it's a chance to be creative in a different way. Like you're sort of outside it. You need to inspire people. And and it's easy to get skeptical or even cynical with almost anything, but with acting and things like that, it can go that way, and I felt that way on and off over the years. What it does is that there's people who are coming over, they're younger, they really have such an interest, there's a, wow, this is an amazing thing to do, we want to learn things. So you're a bit of a role model, and it's nice to pass on, because I'm telling these kinds of stories about, horror stories about acting and stuff, but it's funny. Like you just, the reality of things, having lived something, you get to share some of that with people, and just to watch people be creative, and to give them also the technical acting things that can help. How do you achieve something? Are there, the different ways we can go about building character, building story. So that's it's a cool thing to do.
Something like now you're talking about all this stuff. What else you can do if you want? You can do coaching. You can do personal coaching. Right? And you can charge for that because you have so much experience. You could actually, that's very good money into
No, I've thought about that.
I know a lot of people actually, some of my friends, they do private coaching. And they make good money and they travel. Everything is paid for, right? Someone's kid want to learn something, you go there and you teach them stuff like that. It's a big thing now.
I know.
Right? So and you're not locked down. That's what I like about it. You're not stuck. You can travel. I love traveling.
Me too.
When I stay someplace for too long, crazy things are becoming dark. Right?
Yeah, I know. No, I feel the same way. Movement is important.
Now there's something. There's a lot of people in different cultures that they want to learn English acting.
Yes.
That's something you could,
that's the thing.
with your experience, that's something you could go after. Right? And then
I also have a background in social work that mixes in with this. So there's that sort of aspect of things too.
Talk about, do you have any film coming up now? Any upcoming films you're going to be part of?
Right now, what's coming up? There's a web series that I'm part of.
What is it called?
I'm not even sure how much of it I can talk about because it's something that's just it's Barkerville is producing it.
Oh, wow.
So it's again, I don't want to say too much about it because it's not. I have a role in it. I'm not producing and I'm not writing. So there's things that I don't know all the details. But that's coming up in April. So I'll be doing that for sure. I'm just started work on a screenplay of an adaptation of a one-man show that I do. So my goal is to turn that into a one-person film.
Yeah, which is totally doable. Right?
Yeah, and that's what, and it's cool. I mean, it's a Sherlock Holmes story. It's adapted from Arthur Conan Doyle, but I've added little bits,
Little spice and salt.
little things, sort of character stuff, and it's adapted from one particular story. But I've edited in pieces of other stories, and it's Sherlock Holmes, more or less talking about how he got to where he is.
Yeah.
How did he become who he is?
Yeah.
So that's I've done that as a live. I just did a performance at Barkerville for Family Day of that show, a live performance. So I'm putting it together as a screenplay, and I have some ideas on how I want that to look, and you know what I mean. So that's something I'm spending time working on, and I will do. Probably the earliest I could even get started as far as shooting anything or doing anything would be the fall. Because I've got teaching. I'm going to Mexico in a week and a half, and then I'm back to teaching, then the web series, and then rehearsals for Barkerville, the main stage show start May 1st, and there'll be reams of music to learn and all this stuff. So there's a lot going to start. This gets to be this is a busy time of year. So those are the things that are coming up.
Good.
Yeah.
Where can people find you? Do you have a website? Do you have any?
I don't have a website. I'm on Facebook like everybody is. My Sherlock Holmes Alone page is the one if someone may be interested in what I'm doing, that's my own personal passion project that I spend a lot of time always thinking about. And that's something I want to do more and more of. But this is something I do myself. It's completely produced by me. There's no sponsorship, there's no grants, it's me. And that mees a lot to me. It hasn't made me any money at all yet, but I think it will. But part of why I like to do it, I want that feeling of having, and I told this to the students last year because we did a project where I had them create a monologue. And we did an evening of monologue performances. So whatever you want, it can be based on your own life, it can be part of your story, it could be character driven, doesn't matter, whatever you think you can achieve. And it was quite challenging. So I said it's anywhere from 10 minutes to half an hour.
Oh, that's a long.
It's a lot.
That's
I said, these are but some people went for the long haul. Most didn't, but that's okay. But my point was, not only are you creating a piece of work, but you're creating something you can always do. And even if it's for the enjoyment of doing it, you could get 3 or 4 of you together when school is done, you got your diploma, you can go rent, say, Art Space above Books and Company, and you could do an evening of monologues. You could do this. You can do it. You can go do it. It's something you have, and you don't need a lot of resources. You can just go do it. So I like to have something that, if I really want to do a show, like, I haven't done anything in a while, I'm going to go, and I've done this before with other one-person shows I've done. I'll go to Quesnel and rent a space at the Community Arts and Culture Center there and just do the show. And 35 people will come. And that's not a lot, but I did the show. Because you can. So that's why it's important. You can always do that. So if you need to practice your craft, if you need to work on something, you got something you can work on. So I go to the gym, get on the treadmill, and I'll rehearse the show in my head.
Oh wow!
Right.
That's amazing.
And then I'll change from the treadmill and I'll do the second half of the show on the bike. So it gives me something to think about. So I'm not thinking about, my God, I gotta run. You got something to occupy space in your head. So yeah, it's kind of, so that there's a page, Sherlock Holmes Alone.
Yeah.
There's not a lot on it yet, but it's building because there's some pictures, there's performance stuff. So that's the thing I'm really kind of into as far as my personal stuff right now. Yeah.
It's amazing. Anything else you want to say before we finish?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thankfully to be here. This is great. It's not, it's funny because I didn't know, you come down and go, oh, it's an interview. Well, all right, it's an interview. I don't know,
Hopefully it wasn't.
What's an interview? What does that mean? Okay, no, you know what I'm saying, right? It's like, okay, well, but it's nice. It's just nice talking. And, the input of what my story, as it were, is interesting. I know it's interesting.
It's very interesting.
But you don't, you're yourself. And you're not... Yeah, and I know it's interesting, but it's reminded me that there's been this long...
You should write a book. Seriously.
Yeah.
Right? It's a very interesting story, especially, when you're like in film industry. A lot of other directors like to find out about everyone's story, right?
Yeah.
Because
totally.
a lot of people give up, but some.
Well, that's the other thing. So I mean, I'll be 55 this year.
I thought you were 30.
Well, yeah, that was a while ago. But either way, so I mean, again, no matter what.
Yeah.
Up and down, in and out, back and forth,
Yeah.
with being an actor, entertainer, musician at times, writer, all the different things I love to do and still love to do. Yes, there's times when I completely quit for a period of time,
Yeah.
but there's always been a way to come back to it.
Yeah.
And you can forget that sometimes. So it's nice to review something and go, oh, I haven't thought about that in a while.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You know what I mean? So it's been nice.
No, you got a really good story. You got you're very photogenic, right?
Well, thank
And then the way your personality is very interesting, and then your story is amazing, right? You've been through a lot of stuff, right? So
Yeah.
So you should definitely do
All
a
right.
book. You should hit for a movie.
I'll write a book.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, it's a pleasure
Cool.
to have you
Thank
on.
you so much. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been really fun.
I'm gonna finish the show.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much for joining us on this episode of North NBC Narratives on Location. I hope that you learned something about your passion and you follow your dream and don't give up. Just before we finish, why is it important to follow your passion?
We need purpose. We need purpose, whatever your passion is. It doesn't have to be theater. It doesn't have to be art. It can be anything, whatever. You need something for yourself.
Yeah.
You need something for yourself. Not that other people are involved, but you need to feed something for yourself to keep life interesting, if nothing else. Yeah, and it's yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
Hopefully see you soon. Maybe we work with you. I don't know.
Yeah,
You
well, I
never
hope so.
know. Yeah?
It'd be great. Yeah. Totally.